Always trying to reach the mainstream, we should play coy. Say, we don't want to share with you guys. We've got our own. Make them come courting us.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, the one that keeps coming through to me, is as far as an archetype is the merry pranksters. It's kind of there's a bit of that avenue that I think works too.
To put in my 2 cents there.
Wait. Go ahead, Nito.
Yeah, just to put in my 2 cents there, I agree with you, Richard. What I tend to say is we need to become the mainstream, meaning ignore them. It's no use talking to them for many reasons, right? And if we want to be, doing it better, we need to do it better and become the mainstream, basically, in our own way, in our own right. Like you said.
Exactly.
Oh, yes. That's all.
Welcome to the July 24th edition of The Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we have David, Heather, Edwin, Buddy, Richard, and Robert. We will be talking about political correctness, the stories about panspermia and humanity's beginnings, and new evidence of a moving pole during humans' time on Earth. Please like and subscribe.
What we have done is usurp the media because we found out that we are the media. We ourselves respond. We respond faster than the media can respond because we have the devices on us. So then that gives us the power, and through activity, we become the media, and we've already surpassed it. And there's many different channels. But the problem is there's a big fight, and it's not over yet. It's just begun.
Yeah, and we should always remember that even though Velikovsky was dismissed by the mainstream, it was a bestseller.
Yeah.
And how many scientific treatises are bestsellers?
Right.
None.
Right. Oh, there.
But that was a scientific treatise, So you know what I'm saying.
Oh yes. Actually, I love Julian Jaynes for that exact same reason. It's just it's just his thesis. Just 1,500-page thesis is what it is. Just one essay. It's just a very long one. Really. So anyway, hi guys.
Hey.
Hey.
How you doing?
Oh, hard at work.
Okay.
I was.
Better late than never.
Anyway, so I'm glad that everyone's happy. Hi.
Hi.
If you want to be the way that they changed the history in the past there, Richard, that I know of, and you guys can correct me since you might know more, that they had basically technical schools and other things like that back in the 1500s or so. Maybe, even the first universities were kind of, controlled, right, for a few hundred years, but what they could teach. But as that idea progressed, the Renaissance idea, the need for, we need people who can do this. We need people who are skilled and are trained that can, and that practicality and the ability to profit from it changed was basically completely divorced from the whole don't investigate everything, none of this is worth living, just wait until you die and then you can get to heaven type of attitude. So I see it's going to be, they have a lot of practicality in the engineering, but they don't make any money in cosmology really, or astrophysics. There's none of that. Maybe a few companies can make a satellite, right? But that's
so you're talking about the pragmatic aspect of education as far as feeding a system.
Well, and if you want to overtake another paradigm, it has to be like these guys really know what they're talking about. Like as we said before, meteorology. If you could make a school of that's all based on a different theory, or earthquake prediction, and actually predict stuff, Like this is of practical use.
It's true what Neil says. If I think back about my own education and the other directions that other people did right, there are many engineering training universities, if you will, but we never will ever have a good model that explains how things are really working in nature, right? In reality, because then we could figure out too much of ourselves on our own, if you will. But on the other hand, what they do emphasize is, we need good mathematicians, good engineers, good such and such. That's what we do need. But understanding, I believe, the real understanding is, to say the least, is not stimulated.
Right. But, well, you could say that out of, all the many thousands of academicians, there's very little collaboration on new frontiers. Whereas people, if we talk about the internet community, maybe there's fewer of us, but we do a lot more collaborating and sharing. So it gives us an edge.
More and more, yeah.
On making advances.
Right, right.
It also helps that, we've been kind of raised in the erroneous idea, actually, but it's true, it is there, that we've been trained by Spock and, people from Stargate and stuff like that a smart person will come along with a theory and say, this is what's going on, and in less than 45 minutes we will save the world, or the universe or whatever we're saving.
Yeah.
But that sort of immediate result requires filtering, though, at the end of the day, because obviously we can go off into left field and not produce anything worthwhile, but at the same time, your collaborations could be very beneficial, especially, just simple ones like we talk about all the time between like geology and electrical engineering or something.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that kind of happens with a lot of this stuff is there's a controversy around it. I think the one that's most compelling to me is like what happened like right around 1900, and it seems the uncovering of that is fairly controversial, and if that narrative gets unleashed strongly, that's going to have a major impact.
Which narrative are you referring to? Sorry, Richard.
I think it's an example of what you said is that a white knight comes in and saves everything, and that's kind of what relativity and quantum theory thought they were doing.
Or, then you can get more, this is where this narrative kind of goes down a crazy rabbit hole, but it's like you can argue that was
crazy rabbit holes, actually.
Yeah, exactly. That was a creation of something to cover up something else that was discovered,
See, I don't know if I can buy into the conspiracy on that. Don't get me wrong. I understand that there is some reason to think that, and there was certainly some nefarious dealings given the development of the first FETs and the first BJTs and stuff like that, and RCA being dickholes. I understand that. I'm not denying that sort of thing, because that's bad. That's just business, but it's bad business. But the nature of thinking that I think that they are in earnest. I think that they really do think, they really thought that quantum and relativity were answers to where they want to go, as opposed to people like probably Tesla and Schrodinger.
They were sincere. I'm just saying that
I don't think they were sincere, actually, personally.
Well, it's true
just to give the opposing views.
Well, no, Bohr, it's true, pushed for the Copenhagen interpretation and all that.
Right. That's
sort of outlawed. There was that. But
that's a little bit of the whole hero worship. I'm the big guy on campus. My ideas are better than yours. Yeah.
No, I don't see conspiracies there. I do. Paul, thinking you had found the Grail actually hadn't. No, Dave? What do you mean? What conspiracy are you saying?
Because I think heavy sides. There was a huge push in the electrical engineering with transmission lines, etc. There was a major interest level in that going on, and that was a burgeoning field on its own. And then all of a sudden it got hijacked. And I would argue it's very similar to what we were talking about the other day with Franz Boas. It got hijacked and put into a higher level. This confounding through the very, very complex mathematics. And I argue it's a tribal takeover. It was a tribal takeover of where it was naturally going.
Well, there's certainly.
I think I could.
Suppression of Tesla, yes.
Yeah, well, that's the prime example. He's the star lead, but there's a ton of other.
But that's political. I don't see that as.
I think it's all political.
What do you think their motive is for doing that?
Control.
Well, yes.
And by the way, through the monetary system.
Well, no. I'm thinking of it simpler. Don't get me wrong. I'm not denying that there is some things going on in the background. Please understand that. I understand that big business, the robber baron era, they were fighting Teamsters. They were fighting everything, trying to make sure that they would have future control over. I mean, since since logistics became a thing, like since trains, they were before that even. But
canals.
But what I meant is that they're at a situation. Someone like Tesla was advocating for the freedom or the free energy forever. We can light the world. Electricity can do everything. And he seemed like an electric universe proponent but he actually built things that were pretty out there, and they were trying to not like that sort of fanfare with him, like that the fact that he could do really awesome and crazy things that would impress people was going against their idea of control, which was let's wire people in and let's make them pay for it type of idea, which is obviously how they wanted to make money. So I think that this was more of a business decision than some sort of more or less, we have to screw him over because of PR, more or less, type of thing.
Well, J.P. Morgan was the one funding him. J.P. Morgan was an agent of the Rothschilds, and Westinghouse. And what he told Tesla is, "What, you can't charge for it?" That's the end of your research. So you can say it's a business decision, but
I think there was another.
There's a fuzzy borderline between making money and having power. Well, there's a slight difference.
William Randolph Hearst did the same thing.
Before that, the company that became GE, General Electric, in that Tesla era, made no secret about it that they were after just about every electric patent that they could get their hands on. They were going for monopoly because they could see that the electricity, of course, was to be the big business of the future. It would dominate everything. I mean, look around us. It did become that. So they made no secret about it. They were after every patent just for monopoly reasons, right? And once you have a market like that, you're going to defend it. Yeah, so any industry threatening that entire market will be defended just for business reasons. And there are other factors too, right? As like Richard points out. Here.
Oh, sure. I immediately think of Orson Welles and William Randolph Hearst and RKO Studios and his movie, and exactly the same type of thing. Where it was he was like, you could say he was petty, he was all this, but at the end of the day, he didn't want to lose money or his fortune, so making sure this guy got buried was good for business. Because he made fun of me. A propagandist
this is where
propaganda?
The newspapers at the time controlled everyone's I mean, this was everyone's reality. That was a reality control.
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
It was a virtual reality of the time. Right?
the agreed upon standard of the press.
Well,
sure.
no, but the manipulated view of this is how the realization that we're painting reality. To our
well, yes, but not
course,
everyone.
Since we have the paintbrush, we have the advantage of being able to.
So the Hearst papers were the Hearst papers were the CNN of the day. You're saying?
Well, I was going to say Fox News because they're the ones that create the war, but
same modality.
Same modality.
Yeah.
What do you mean Fox News? It's the whole liberal left.
It's the whole thing. It's the whole war. The whole thing.
Fight Russia.
It's go to Jim Morrison, and then Jim Morrison. It gets into this whole crazy Laurel Canyon thing. But the media is, he who controls the media controls the mind. Yeah, that's pretty great quote. But I think it's true.
Well, you're in fact, it's called Manufacturing Consent. Noam Chomsky wrote a book on it. Yeah, I'm sure we've all at least seen parts of that movie. I know it's 3 hours long, but yeah.
He takes so much time to make such a small point.
But they're good points sometimes.
I
can
Chomsky,
barely.
Oh God, he's
I
so
have
boring,
to.
man.
Well, you see, that's what I mean. You have to listen to him until you actually find him not boring. It's hard. It took me friggin' 2 years to get through. Like just listening to some repeats of some good quotes.
If you jump one level up, though, it's like it's all about polarization. It comes down simple to that. It's that simple because it's like, okay, there's always a dividing line between whose side are you fighting for. It's like Jordan Peterson is on the right, Noam Chomsky is the left.
But he's not. Neither one of them.
But they associate. They're associated with those sides for sure. Just generally collectively, right? And it's like these are illusory ideas ultimately.
Yes.
And ultimately, it's a divide and conquer type of thing, and it's the top level polarity.
Politics is trying to make things look simple when these guys are specifically trying to say it's not that fucking simple. Like they're being really direct and saying, "Look how complex this is."
To make it complex, which is so you add cognitive dissonance. It's not that complex.
Well, it's the forces
you've got
involved.
a small
They're
group of people
much bigger.
controlling both sides. There's your answer.
But that's not entirely true, though.
Let's make it look like it's really complex. But ultimately, the game is where the people in control and that have all the power. Control both.
We agree with you. I agree with you.
Let's hear what Neil wants to say. Let's hear what Neil wants
to say. I totally agree on that front that there is I'm not denying that rich people have power and powerful people control things. Let's just be honest, okay? That's not even pretense. But what they're trying to say is that if you want to really fix something, you have to understand how the institution or the system or the society works. And what forces are at play. This is what I meant. This is what these guys do. Sometimes an intellectual way of speaking is not the colloquial way, and sometimes getting the point across is easier because you recognize the needs of your audience. Whereas sometimes and especially with doctors and stuff, they're going to be specific because they're trying to tell you, you can say this, like Dr. Jordan Peterson would say. Look, you can say we want equality for all, but what are you really saying? What do you really mean? And how are you getting into the nitty-gritty of what forces are at play to create why, for example, women don't get equal pay? Is it we ignore choice of job or something like that? Little things, and this is what he's trying to get at. There's more forces than we're giving credit to, and and that's all I meant. And
I haven't been able to get anything useful out of Jordan Peterson. I mean, he's so angry to begin with.
I don't know if he's angry.
I watched it. There was this classic debate of what is political correctness, and it had Jordan Peterson and then who else? I forget the guy who was Jeeves.
Stephen Fry.
Stephen, he's great.
They were in Toronto, I think, for the Munk debates. I think that's what.
That's the Munk debates, and I don't think Jordan Peterson just. I mean, it's like I just can't get any coherence out of what he's saying. He says a lot of things, and atomistically, there's little points there, but I don't get any vision or anything from him.
Well, I think that's the point, in a way.
No.
These people are not ideologues. Ideologues is what I mean. They're not like when you're surrounded by pundits.
They're not? I think they are.
When you're surrounded by pundits, you read that into everything. But in actuality, people are people. You are all individuals. You all have your own points of view, which, by the way, I love every one of them. I mean, none of you are assholes.
Life of Brien.
But so
no.
Well, I'm worse. I'm bad. I'm probably the worst asshole. You might be right up there too.
I compete though.
If Jordan has anything to say, I think it's the existence of beneficent hierarchies. That seems to be his main point. That we need hierarchies, and some of them are good, and it's unfortunate some are corrupt. From a political point of view, and then he tries to
he's coming to
undermine ideologies, which is a good thing. But I just don't find him something I want to spend much time watching.
No, I don't.
You watch. Just if I may just interject, you watch him come on. He just came onto the scene fairly recently, right, over the last 2 years, and then has gained.
All because of what Ontario did.
Yeah, but they act like it's an organic process, and I argue it's not an organic process.
What do you mean? You don't know why? Why?
Oh, I get where you're going.
See, no. I have to reject this straight up. Number one. Do you know why he's famous? What he did to make him famous? Do you know what happened?
Tell us.
Okay. Yeah. Ontario, the province, which is like the size of Texas or bigger, I don't even know how large it is. This province decided to put in one of the bills that they are mandating that you must identify a trans person by their preferred pronoun. And in so doing, they basically mandated speech. Not what you couldn't say, but what you had to say. Now, and doing that, he was like, no, screw that shit. And he went right to town on it. Because it's not the principle. He said that he would agree if a trans person wanted to be spoken that way, in that pronoun, he would do that. It's not a problem. The issue was specifically the law. Mandate. Yes. And that fight went right into the court, and he went with a lawyer and everything right to the House of Commons and shit, and made a very passionate place on this. Now, this, of course, his objection to it, and of course, all the people who came directly to him, the we'll call liberal leftists. Actually, no, that's wrong. I'm going to say leftists, because perhaps maybe passionate leftists. I'm not sure, because classical liberalism is all of us, so I have to recognize that openness and liberty is a good thing. I'm trying not to make that into an evil word. But at the end of the day, though, there were people who were, perhaps the word is social justice warrior, coming out to argue and protest him. And that made him even more famous. And because he seemed to be pissing on trans, this made the right love him. And that's totally not cool.
You think that's totally organic?
No. That I admire that. I think that is heroic. That
because he's being very specific on what he's fighting, and
his
it's a very good
opposition
thing
to
to fight.
political correctness is great.
Yes, and that's a good thing to fight, and it's the same thing that even Eddie Izzard, who by the way is a transvestite, will actually agree with. Is that you have to political correctness is poison. If the word should be used, it should be called perhaps maybe right mindfulness, or perhaps maybe considerate thinking. Like,
no joke, is political correctness in my country is afflicted with that disease as well, very much.
Yes.
But it comes from communism. It's a communistic term.
Yeah, I'm not cool with it. What I really like, what I really like,
that's true.
Like, I want to be able to say what I want no matter what. And don't get me wrong, if you get me wrong, that's fine. We'll have to understand. But you're right that these people are trying to fight. Like, there's if you come at it with the appropriate intention, not, like being honest. Like, if you say a word, like, for example, if I refer to someone as handicapped, apparently that's not appropriate today. I would not know that, and I'm sorry. I'm just, I'm not trying to be a dick.
Those people make such a big deal out of it.
That's what I mean.
And they are so far gone by it that they are actually constantly discriminating. An example is, in my country, they have a law proposal now whereby they need to hire more, and I don't know the correct terms here, but half-blood people, so people from two cultures, right? Two colors, whatever, right? And so you need more of those because that would represent society more. Now, whatever you think of that is, I can imagine already the practical situation, sitting in my office as a team leader, in come the 3 new candidates. Okay. You look, half a light brownish color or something. Are you mixed in ethnicity perhaps, because that would be a good thing, right? I mean, how are you going to do this?
Exactly.
They're emphasizing the discriminatory effects constantly and then telling other people you shall not discriminate.
I know.
It's ripping my mind.
We also have
Jordan. I want to say one more thing about that debate.
Yeah.
Please. And because I've got the link here, and
this is a good debate. I like this.
Toward the end, Stephen Fry
is publishable as special.
It is. Stephen Fry's closing remarks. They begin at 1.40.29 toward the end of the video. Let me say what I'm going to say, and then I'll.
Okay.
And what he said was so about political correctness was so much. I mean, even though I agree with Jordan on that, what Jordan says, it was so much better than Jordan, so much more elegant. And he was basically saying that they talk about diversity, but actually what they want is the opposite in terms of beliefs.
Yeah.
It's and so it's like they want inclusiveness except for those who don't agree with us,
Right. No diversity of thought.
Yeah, so Stephen Fry was saying, he used about 6 different metaphors, very eloquently. And I thought he did better in characterizing political correctness in those few moments than Jordan did with all of his strong rhetoric.
I'll have to check that out to be sure. Don't get me wrong, I love Stephen Fry. He's a beautiful speaker. I've listened to many of his speeches.
I'm bringing up the video now.
There you go. Okay.
Nice, you got it. Yeah,
got it.
Perfect. Yep.
Okay, then go to 1.40.29. In the time sequence.
Roger.
There we go.
Roger, Richard.
Yeah, that'll give his remarks, and then if you want to bring in Jordan, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Can you? Oh, now let's see if the audio's. Can you hear the audio?
Standing up. Go ahead, do it. No,
you're gonna have to share your audio.
Audio coming through. Okay, hold on.
Just pause it there.
Let's see. We got to do all the technical stuff. Let me see how to get the audio to come up. So here we go. Let's see now.
There's been an enormous.
Can you hear that?
I can.
In the conversation.
You can't.
Classic, if I can call it.
Can.
Huck Spring Snake.
Yes.
Which is it's a mode of discourse. It's a rhetorical style that I find endlessly refreshing and vivifying. But I'm not sure that we actually focused on the point in question. And my objection has always been towards orthodoxies. I'm a heterodox and a contrarian, and I can't help myself. And I think there's been an underestimation of the fact that language does affect people. It does make the young, in particular, as they're starting out on their educational or their work careers, it makes them very anxious. It makes them very angry, very upset, very alienated, to feel that they don't know anymore how to operate in the world, how to engage in relationships, how to think honestly. So they accrete more and more to their own mini groups. And I think that's dangerous and unhappy for society. I think it's reflected in the paucity of cinema and literature and art and the culture generally, is that there's a fear that's pervading it. And while people can talk to academia and say, you should come and see our lessons, our lectures are open and free and ideas are exchanged. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure it's true, but I don't think we should underestimate how much this feeling is prevalent in the culture of this strange paradox that the liberals are illiberal in their demand for liberality. They are exclusive in their demand for inclusivity. They are homogeneous in their demand for heterogeneity. They are somehow undiverse in their call for diversity. You can be diverse, but not diverse in your opinions and in your language and in your behavior. And that's a terrible pity. So I would say that I'm sorry that it got a bit heated in places, because I was hoping it wouldn't. I was hoping it would be a shining example of how people of all different kinds of political outlooks can speak with humor and wit and a lightness of touch. As G.K. Chesterton said, angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. And I think it's very important for us, who are privileged, all four of us, privileged to be here, to be asked to be here, to take ourselves a little bit more lightly, not to be too earnest, too pompous, too serious, and not to be too certain. It's a time, I think, for really engaging, emotionally fulfilling, passionate, and positive doubt. That's what I would urge. Thank you.
Nice.
That was great.
You see what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's great. No, it's lovely.
Great.
I mean, that is beautiful. Beautiful is the only word.
Yeah. Now that's something to aspire to, as far as being able to speak, in a coherent manner. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't like about the titles, though. With when you go looking through Jordan Peterson stuff, it's always like Jordan Peterson body tackles and slams this other thing to the ground, and in a very
Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, Jesus, and I go watch it, and I'm like, that was a perfectly respectable debate. I can have that on the show. Like nothing was even crazy. She didn't insult him. He didn't insult her. What are you doing? And of course, it's just the title is meant to grab, right? Get clicks. So
Clickbait.
Yeah, heated up. I mean, there's part of what we're doing is doing that. So perhaps hot calling the kettle black, but
But Neil, did you want to say more positive about Jordan? Or
no,
not?
I didn't really have.
We cut you off.
No.
Who speaks of him is Rupert Sheldrake. He goes into talking about the Jordan Peterson phenomena.
When I watched, oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
No,
go ahead, David.
Just really quick.
Interesting.
Yeah. But he talks about that there isn't a sense of compassion with him. That's the problem. There's no real sense of I think you were picking up on it, Richard. There's a hardness and lack of heart and like very
pragmatic,
highly analytical.
Highly analytical. Yes.
I used the word angry. And
I think the people who really like him are angry.
He has a strong defense. He has a lot of defensiveness. Because he got, the more his ideas were being challenged and stuff, the more angry and emotional he got. And that's unfortunate for him, because
it's easy to fall into.
It detracts from his, from whatever his core message is.
Right.
See, I'm not really sure that I take him as angry, though. I don't know. There's a certain seminarianness about him, like that sort of French Catholic type.
He's seeking ideals. I mean, I like that. There's actually the message he promotes is purpose and intention and achieving, which I like. Those are good things, I think.
Yeah, and practical goals.
He's into meritocracy, that's for sure.
I think he's a populist.
See, and I would say that's I say that populists would use him. That would be what I would say. It's no different than seizing on Bernays by the people of the 1930s when propaganda really took off, when they wanted to know how mobs thought.
Exactly.
It's
but populism is a very broad church.
Oh God, yes.
Very broad, and it basically it's saying anything that ordinary, let's say, non-university graduates would resonate with.
Well, usually it's also based on...
Not that that's a bad thing. I don't have anything against non-university graduates. Don't get me wrong.
No. I understand what you're saying. I think of it the other way, though. I think that you're right, but there's a part where it separates is the difference of the use. Like popular good thoughts, America #1 sometimes, or the type of ideals that are of respect and courage and stuff like that. Things that we think that we can all get behind. Even a good movie can convey that. But
something our parents would have liked.
But usually, populism that can go further into like abject nationalism type of stuff usually has a darker undertone, usually against something, usually against another, usually a left, like political correctness, for example. We could all be, our feelings towards that could be used by a populist, for example.
Well, I think the general thing which populism goes against is forces that are changing the culture in a way that some people would rather it didn't get changed.
Well, yes, and usually those are left.
In that sense, there's a conservative, by definition, that's a conservative.
Traditional conservative, yeah.
And, I over the years, I've come to believe there's a lot to be said for conservatism in the sense of it's ain't broke, don't change it kind of thing. And, I used to be a flaming liberal, but now I'm seeing that there is something to be said about conservatism.
But we got to understand where these words originally came from, right and left, and when you get all the way down.
Back to Rome, actually.
Well, I wasn't even going to go there. I was just going to go all the way to say
the Senate in Rome.
It was the French. It was the French. I don't know whether the assembly, where you actually had the people sitting on the right, royalists on the right.
Yes.
And
really? No, it's back. It's back. Check out the Senate in Rome, and they had the left and right, and it was the same type of thing. Cato was known as being a hard right.
It was a bicameral.
And then
thank you,
Caesar
David.
came in, and he was obviously you're welcome.
Well, they probably modeled it after the same thing because that was during the Renaissance and the ideas. But the end result is the right was, when you go right conservative, it was also royalty and that sort of for the crown. And a lot of times I have been like that when I was younger. I've gotten more loose, and then now I'm kind of realizing that both trains of thought were probably incorrect.
Well, but pro-royalty could also be seen as pro-stability.
Well, yes.
It's not that I love, a particular king, but I like society to have some kind of stability.
It's that, the internal process, I believe, with the monarchy is the sense of it being part of a family. The king is representing the father, and it's actually that state it's different than the president model is like usurps that kind of natural one where it's the king.
Yeah, you're talking about Confucianism.
Am I? Okay.
Actually, in a way.
Confucius. He was looking back on what had been seen as a stable society and it was deteriorating, and he was finding out why. And for him, the family was the beginning with the father,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And it goes all the way up to the emperor. And, so like one big family metaphor, maybe.
Right.
And each one respecting their responsibilities as well as their power and their rights.
Things on the birthday? Candles?
Which is a Jordan thing.
Yes. I guess he would agree with that. And I don't think anyone who really thinks would.
The whole I Ching is about the wise ruler. The wise ruler does this, the wise ruler does that,
Half the time they weren't talking to us; they were actually talking to kings. Yeah, like this is how to be a good lord.
Probably King Carpenter.
Hey, Robert, we're getting a lot of crosstalk, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was on mute.
Nope. Well, hey, what can I say? I had people who were, one step away from telling me the lizard people were real. So
David Icke loses me when he gets to the lizards.
Oh, he's crazy.
But he's right about so many things.
I know.
It's almost like he makes up the lizards.
Actually,
so
I
that
think
he'll
that
be rejected by a whole bunch of people.
But it's L. Ron Hubbard went there too, though, right?
I see this as number one TV. V went there, so V the visitor.
It's controlled opposition, dude. They want you to believe that they're part of a different bloodline, and this goes straight to Nazis and control of people based off of their bloodlines.
And eugenics.
They want us to think that they are the reptilian race that came down, called the Nephilim, back in the history, and all of the ancient documents that support the evidence of mating with angels or Nephilim, so that they can claim that their Rh negative blood is the blood type of the people that need to survive, while the rest of us are just killed off and hauled off to these camps that have already been built all over the world.
Now that is one of my favorite conspiracies right there. But it's not. I mean, it's not real. He made up most of that. In 97, it was his big first debate on his first big reveal of the lizard people, David Icke. So he was actually one of the first people. The evidence supported, though, through the Sumerians. Number one, there is a few passages that indicate the idea of the Nephilim, which we've all seen in the Torah, Old Testament stuff. But there's only a few passages, and then there's
he calls them the. The thing is, Zecharia Sitchin is responsible for a lot of that.
Well, I was about to go into him, actually. That was the next step.
I've heard from other people. I really don't know. I mean, I was pretty impressed by him, but a lot of people say that he did a lot of mistranslating. And,
I was going to say that exact same thing.
Yeah.
That was my interpretation of him as well. Other people have done other translations that don't seem to indicate that. However, you got to admit, some of those lizard-like statues with the wings and stuff that are probably Jupiter or something, but with the acorn and stuff, I mean, I find that to be fascinating still. But I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
But there's fish and iguanas
and the whole idea with
But I think a lot of that is coming from us too. I mean, there's a whole whack of people. Like, I mean, back in the 1960s, the thing that gave birth to the X-Files was this overwhelming, the truth is out there, the feeling that visitors are around, UFOs, yada, yada. We didn't really have the science down. We didn't really understand it. So we thought that this is the way it could be, that aliens would come visit, yada, yada, yada. So we've played into that in our own heads or whatever and our own cultures. Later on, because of the impracticalness of space travel, a lot of us have probably, we also have this idea that, no, ancient aliens. Oh, this is another great idea, like that we've always been this way. And this gives people the faint hope that they are somehow special. It's a new age spiritualism type of stuff. In a way, it's almost religious, but it's not cult-like necessarily because, well, unless you're necessarily buying all of David Icke's book and going to his camps.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's happening. But
it's huge. It's an organization, and it's very profitable.
Oh yeah,
David Wilcock and this whole Emery Smith,
Gaia, right?
Yeah, they're into that type of thing. They want to play. I mean, it's a money making, and it's self-reinforcing as well.
So if I may chip in, I mean, I'm trying to keep my mouth shut on these topics. They're fascinating and other things at the same time, right? But if you're going to mention David Wilcock, I mean, the guy is pretty much the last part of his name, right? He's a shill, he's a fraud, and he's an idiot. I mean, I had to say that. Sorry.
Okay. I appreciate that statement. There's something I wanted to say about this alien business. One of the themes of science fiction is that Earth developed interstellar space travel, and it has these space vehicles, and it goes and it colonizes other planets. Now, if there are hundreds of thousands of Earth-like planets in the galaxy, which some people claim, then the idea of humanity going and colonizing other planets makes a lot of sense as a possibility. But if so, Earth is much, much more likely to be a colonized planet than to be the original colonizer yet to happen.
There you go.
Right. Of course.
So,
because
the hypothesis that we were colonized, maybe interbred, because it was better to start with somebody with a species adapted to this particular environment, but bring in the genes of the, dominant humanity, is a hypothesis that should be kept on the table.
I agree.
That's exactly what they're putting out there. That's the main belief system of these this group of people, and it's huge.
That may be so, buddy. That may be so, but the emphasis is they come to invade us, eat us, cheat us, dominate us, etc. And my advice to any alien race would be, please don't come here. We're a nasty species. Just look at our movies. We're boasting about it, right? The aliens will lose. There you go. And
I don't think that would be a motivation.
But to turn the things around a little bit. But I agree with Richard. I mean, the logic would dictate that to be more likely the case, right? That Earth did get seeded by intelligent life from somewhere else, especially in an electric universe. Planets get zapped and all.
Yeah.
But what if there's the conscious aspect of all these things that we're kind of picking up on with the Rupert Sheldrake discussing is the sun consciousness, is our perception of reality absolutely different from what another reality may be. This is a fairly
obviously our minds control our reality, and just in the 800s, or let's go to 700s. Our entire idea of what the world was always related to God and the afterlife. The pains for the thorns of the devil, red for the color of the cross, or red for the blood of the cross, and this is what a rose meant. It had nothing to do with reality, and that was their reality. Now that is something...
It still doesn't. A rose resembles love or a million other things. But it doesn't really.
Right, it's in our head, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So reality is so flexible and so malleable that it's hard for anybody to actually say what it is. And when you start to define it, like Rupert Sheldrake does very well, he starts to talk about these nested hierarchies and these shapes that are within shapes that are within shapes that are similar. So we're all gearing towards this fractal reality, and it's also holographic. So it's holofractal and it's morphic. It's morphing. Everything's morphing all the time. It's changing. We used to think of our brains as having a certain amount of neurons, but we're discovering that we can completely change and grow them instantaneously overnight, or through a book, or through an awakening, or through an illumination. You can immediately rewire your entire brain, which means neurogenesis. Neurogenesis.
There's a lot of drugs. That's why this pine cone is so interesting that they have back there that they play around with, and how it relates to the pineal gland, which they've referenced throughout history. Including Descartes. As this center point of this fractal nature of things.
Well, I interpret the acorn differently.
Well, there's a ton of writing on it, of course.
Well, I'm not denying that. I just meant that, but a lot of this is also, something that we probably wouldn't know. But here's another thing. As much as I could, I shouldn't say that it's not possible, because obviously it is totally possible that in the past this occurred, because given an infinite amount of time, everything will happen, but So, given that, and I also agree that
that's declarative.
Sure, but anyway, given the fact that it's possible, is what I'm saying. I have to logically agree that if we can agree that space travel is remotely possible, then it is definitely possible that another species, if it came here in the past sometime. Sure.
Right. I've got this one for you. Right?
Hold
this
on.
one. As far as you... Okay.
Wait, let him finish.
Go ahead, Neil.
I just wanted to say, though, that there is other people who have put forward theories that are just all that would be required would be, for example, for us to not do something that we're not really comfortable with, which is basically talk about interbreeding between species. That happens. Hybridization happens in plants all the time, which we are well aware. It's well studied. There are people who study this in animals as well. And the thing that happens there is most of these animals are killed off. But what I'm saying is that given that and the fact that we have properties of several animals, is it not also acceptable to think that perhaps maybe because of a devastating situation of, let's say, a plasma event wipes a lot of things off the planet?
Well, if I can jump in there, Neil. I forgot his name now, but there's this guy who died a few years ago. Fascinating guy. Talks about the alien star child skull.
His name was Lloyd Pye.
Lloyd Pye, thank you. I have great respect for that guy. He gave fabulous information, fabulous presentations.
Love his work.
He seemed to be a true scholar, right? A researcher. And at
least he has some
he
good
seemed
evidence.
to be genuine.
Yeah.
Now, so what you were saying just now, I think if you look at the genome, right, mixing, there's one astonishing fact in the human genome that is the fact that we have 23 pairs, right? Base pairs.
23 chromosomes.
I'll
believe you. I don't know.
Okay, 23. And the monkeys and the apes and all that, they have 24.
Okay.
Now, going from this hypothesis, alien influence or merging of species through whatever means, right? Natural or unnatural. 2 of those chromosome pairs we have are fused together in an awkward way. Basically in a clumsy technical way. And that makes 23 pairs. So now and the theory behind that, now I'm not saying I believe everything here, but the theory behind it is that an alien intelligent species, very look-like, very humanoid, had to fuse them together in order to even try procreation or technical procreation in the lab, whatever, because the pairs need to be similar, right? So, and we have 2 of those chromosome pairs very strangely fused together. And when something goes wrong there, I believe you're talking about a Mongolic child, right? I'm not sure in the English term there.
Down syndrome, I believe it's called.
Down syndrome, that's the one. So those things are hidden in our genome. You know, I'm just trying to throw this out there. That is the reason why I will definitely not poo-poo that suggestion of alien influence, or whatever that was, right? Because if you look at the human genome, that's fascinating. Absolutely.
Well, actually, if you look at the cells work at all, it's fascinating. I mean, they're like machines.
Well, yeah, but let me pick up on Ito. There's something I wanted to follow up on Ito, and that is that looking at the Sitchin material, because he does show these carved blocks, you know, that with images on them and things.
Right.
So his claim is that what happens first is that there's genetic engineering, which is basically what Ito was referring to bridge between the domestic species and what they're trying to reproduce of their own image, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's not by sex that, you know, directly, but then in the Bible somewhere it says they have become like us, right? That after the genetic engineering, it's like the humans have become like us, which then means sex becomes possible. And so that's when you'd have the mating with angels would be following after the first generation of the genetically modified species kind of thing.
Well, I could see that as being the case, but I could also see that it's quite possible that, like, for example, the coneheads were a different species that came from breeding two things together, and we eventually bred them out or killed them off. And we could also think that that there are aliens and they did something like this. But there's a part of me that says Occam's razor, that it's much more likely something like, as much as I can't explain the magic of cells and how they work, because trust me, they work like a computer program sometimes. It blows my mind. But that said, though, there's something to be said for the fact that it's a natural occurrence. However, in the past, a species like ourselves, let's imagine that, for example,
yes, that's where I wanted to go.
Thank you. I knew where you're going to go, I think, now. If we were looking at, say, this is before Saturn left, this is when the golden age, so to speak, and we've had 2,000 years of peace building our societies up, and we've mastered electricity, or the piezoelectric version that they had. We're protected from earthquakes. We control our planet, more or less. We have engineers and we're doing our thing. Long story short, there seems to be, with Lloyd Pye especially mentioned, certain animals, for example, the cheetah, that is like clones. Yep. And they can...
It's a mixture between a cat and a dog.
Yeah. They have dog fur, cat body, dog hands, dog paws, I guess. And
flexible cat back, dog paws, kind of stuff. The thing was created purely for speed.
Yes, it was like, this is the fastest animal we could ever make. And cool enough, they don't attack humans. And they were the guard...
Fastest land animal.
Thank you. And they, there are birds, obviously, go faster, and probably a few bugs. But there was...
you got it.
There is, of course, the idea that they were the guard animals of ancient Egypt, the pharaohs and stuff. So here they are genetically making animals. This to me, and it could be just through advanced husbandry, is what I'm saying. It doesn't have to necessarily be genetic manipulation either.
Well, that's true. I mean, there's many interpretations possible, but I think we've been entertaining one that's worth discussing. And
I think they're all worth discussing. But
so, if I may throw in another factor there, just to complicate things a little bit, right? Now, if we come this far in this logic, yes, in this reasoning, and I think everybody's just being open-minded here, right? Now, what if you plug in the ancient megalithic constructions, as Brien Foerster keeps pointing out on his YouTube channel, which I find fascinating again. And he also points out that all those megalithic ancient structures are damaged by huge catastrophe-like effects, right?
Very much
burning
so, yes.
scars and plasma effects and vitrification, etc., yada yada. Now, if you put in the other website we talked about months ago about a moving pole position that is which you can find by the alignment of the ancient megalithic sites, then they all converge in just 4 or 5 spots where the pole was, right?
It's about 30 degrees off of our current axis.
No, go ahead, Edo.
One more thing, Neil, and then I'll let you go. Now, as Brien Foerster also points out, at these megalithic sites, just about always there, including all the megalithic sites in the whole Western Europe, right? They find the elongated skulls. And now I refer back to Lloyd Pye, right?
Right.
As Brien Foerster, as they're finding out that's a real nice DNA mixture question thing going on there. And that is pretty much a big no-no and will upset the whole thing again, right? Because you're talking ancient DNA, European, Proto-European DNA, that kind of stuff, I believe.
And
lots of
the size.
DNA.
The skulls were huge. Like I mean,
not always, but the point is,
true.
They
not always.
They are not as we are, not humans as we are. These are different type of humans.
Yes.
So whoever they were, either they evolved here, or they manipulated themselves, or they were aliens, and whatever.
That wouldn't surprise me that we did that, that we were like, well, we're smart now. Well, imagine we could make ourselves smarter.
That had the high technology.
And then we try to imitate them by binding our skulls.
These are other DNA-type humans, Neil.
But you're not going to make it measurably bigger that way. You might change the shape.
We're not talking about head wrapping here. This is way beyond that.
Oh, yes. No, I'm just saying the imitators, us, we imitated them, I think. Like, for example, King Tut, if you look at his skull, in real life, you can go see it. It is definitely an elongated skull. Now, the thing is, it's real, it's physical, it's a real skull, it's really him. This tells me that they were real, thank God. And we know that they were also in a position of power. This is a couple other things. So maybe this and of course, because of their head, the way their heads were shaped, we started binding our heads to imitate them, so it seems. But
well, that could well be true, but it was more interesting to pursue the genetic differences that Ido was talking about.
Well, what I'm saying here, that head binding stuff that happened, and now we hypothesize that they did that for obvious reason, mimicking the nobility or the rulers or whatever, right? Or make them more smart. I don't know what it is.
Basic interpretation.
But that's not the issue here. The issue here, the true elongated skulls, right? The real skulls are a different humanoid. They are not misformed humans or reshaped humans. They are not humans. They are very much humanoid and very much similar, but they're not humans. There's a different species here.
So, can you give us a link on
type in Brien Foerster or elongated skulls?
Oh, right,
Brien. Brien.
Right.
Brien.
Brien.
Brien. Yeah, Brien Foerster.
Okay. Let's get some.
I watched a ton of these.
Yeah,
I've seen some. He's pretty convincing. Right?
I have some issues, but I'm not sure. I would definitely listen to him. I don't think he's lying or anything.
Well, I think this is something worth researching because there are too much clues that there's something going on here, and we don't have a proper answer for any ancient megalithic structure. We couldn't properly build them or design them or even move them or pay for them. We could not. I mean, it's ridiculous. We're talking high tech here.
Well, there's the DNA
these skulls are found there, and they are different species. You can see it in many, many, many ways, right?
I would interpret them as whatever we are, and I don't like I said, there's a part of me that would normally come to a natural conclusion, but the same evidence is that these things existed. Clearly, they were considered to be either important or special, and they seemed to be venerated. They've obviously lost that. Now, were they the people? And this is an idea that doesn't escape me. Were they the people before the flood? Did the change in electrical environment change us? Yeah, antediluvian. Thank you. Did the children change, but only some of them stay? That type of thing. There's lots of. Yeah, I know. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, this is a very thrilling topic because it opens up Pandora's box and it allows you to ask many questions. But I think these questions that you're alluding to just now, Neil, those are the questions we need to ask. We can't find the answers right here, right now. But I believe this is one of the most important topics for humanity in order to figure out who and what we are and where we came from and how this all came to be. Right?
I agree.
Really?
I agree, but unfortunately, this is the same type of territory that the UFOologists are taking on, and a lot of the stuff that the electric universe is taking on is mirroring also what the UFOologists are taking on because they're natural curiosities and mysteries, and a lot of the time you just can't prove any of it. So it's a strange area to get into when you start researching different civilizations and different size humanoids throughout history and how many times we've changed as a species between the ice ages and how long we've had to endure it. I mean, these, to me, just by the little bit of research that I found, these little guys never got big, and they were always the size of children, right? These large-headed beings.
No.
Some of them were giants.
Giants cause their double row teeth and yada 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 as well.
It implies that some of them probably were 9 feet or taller.
Yeah, you don't want to meet one of those. They'll no.
They also had very large eyes. It seemed that they were probably nocturnal, and this of course belies the relationship to Neanderthal. Perhaps they were perhaps maybe humans bred with Neanderthal and eventually became them. That and then eventually we killed them off. Who knows?
Right.
It's something left, and what is required, of course, is DNA testing, and that type of thing. But I don't, I'm fascinated as much as the rest of them. The only interpretations I could put on is that, given some of the terrible ideas of catastrophe, the probability of allowing hybrids or otherwise mutated humans to live greatly increases. Because if you need an extra set of hands, it doesn't matter what the hands look like. In a survive or die situation is what I meant. In a well-established society, which is very conformist, even amongst monkeys, they'll just kill off anything that doesn't look right. And that happens here too. So
if you look at this from a perspective of, we're talking about looking at it from a perspective of panspermia right now, which is something placed life on the planet. Now, if you look at it more organically, as if we grew out of the planet, then you can ask certain questions like, were the dinosaurs necessary in the development of us as a species? Were they necessary to create the layers of soil for us to live off of different types of nutrients in order to born and birth us out of this?
There are so many questions in that statement alone. Knowing that there's more, for example, there's 10 inches of topsoil on the northern part of the planet, and on the southern part of the planet, there is only 2 inches.
Well,
that's just an interesting point of view of you were talking about. Sorry.
Right. If there was a plume of smoke and it covered the entire Earth, the majority of it would navigate to the North Pole, wouldn't it?
I honestly don't know.
I don't know. I think that it would. I don't think that it would fall right on the equator. I think that it would go to the equator, get blown up, and get redistributed. I don't know. And for whatever reason, I would think that it'd be in the north.
I could see it going to both poles. I mean, the forces, I think, are kind of, in some sense, symmetric around the equator. You have the forces from the southern current and the forces from the northern current, giving you two, say, pole-centric hemispheres by some metric.
So, do you think it would get distributed at like 60 degrees? I think that there would be parts of the planet that it would be like
David,
it wouldn't be an equal distribution, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, I was just saying that if it was attracted to a pole, I don't think the North would necessarily be uniquely favored. It would probably, the ones in the South would go to the South Pole, the ones in the North go to the North Pole. And if it's 60 degrees, then there'd be 60 degrees North and 60 degrees South. But
there seems to be...
what we're seeing is there's pretty clearly electrodynamics going on.
David, could you hit the term Earth there on that simulator? Yeah. And then height the 10 hectopascal. 10.
Yeah.
Okay. And now please let Neil explain the difference and hit Earth again on top there so that menu goes away. So Neil, could you explain to us the difference between the southern and the northern hemisphere? This is approximately 33 kilometers or something to that effect. and you see the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere. And I see a huge difference. If you click on that southern hemisphere in that purple, you see the speed of the wind, David.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And you can rotate it to the south, so you can see a huge vortex there, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the whole southern pole.
I'd say Walter Russell could explain this.
Also, that's obviously a Birkeland current. I mean,
yeah,
right. But if we go
so they're both twisting clockwise. If you look at the pole direction,
yes.
But they're opposite.
Hang on. First, hit that purplish whitish center with your cursor there. Just hit it once.
The purple is this.
There, yeah. See that 282 kilometers per hour, right?
Yeah, that's
what it says. Okay, now please go to the northern hemisphere and look at that. And then Neil can please explain the difference to us.
All right. Yeah.
Now, where's that huge click somewhere? You'll see the wind speed. It's quite gentle. It's quite gentle breeze there. Just hit it. See, 34.
Okay.
So what's the difference here, guys?
Antarctica is a continent, and the North Pole is just sea.
This is off
and sea ice.
This is high altitude though. But
this is 35 kilometers.
But that is a difference. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I can just tell you what I'm generally looking at. If I was to be blunt, what I'm seeing is that you're going to have a current. The currents that are going in the North Pole are probably able to pass right. Like that's very dry, dusty snow up there. Okay, with ice going right into the water. So chances are that might actually be more direct. However, that said, you also have an insulator right on the cap at the bottom, which is that pole, like the land, which is Antarctica, and it's going around that, it has all ocean. That's where it wants to go in at. So now it has a rotation because of the fact that it cannot go straight in. That's
because it's broad.
Exactly. But that's only one interpretation. The other interpretation is there's actually more current going in the South Pole than the North Pole, which makes sense because when we have for example, when we think of the North Pole of the planet, it's actually the South Pole of the magnet. Because our poles point north, our compasses point north because they are attracted to the South Pole. So the South Pole of the South Magnetic Pole is to the north of the planet. The North Magnetic Pole is to the south. And that would mean that there is more, that is where the dominant current is coming in more than the north. And therefore, this is according to Ampere's law, and of course the spinning and rotation, probably that mass right there, that friggin' mass right there is coming in and spinning. Well, this is generating the magnetic field, which gives it its polarity.
So any flip-flopping like that website suggested, the one we talked a few months ago about the alignment of the megalithic sites, where the pole, I don't know, moves grossly 2,000 kilometers or so, 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers suddenly, that whole pattern can totally change and mess up the Earth system radically, right?
Well, that would be hard to do because the planet is a rotational mass. It's like a top.
Something happened there.
Well, no. There is definitely an alignment of sites, but we don't really know if those sites are actually true because that wonderful video, which by the way I love. I have to stress you can't take this thing too seriously because if you do, you're going to ignore a lot of other evidence that doesn't fit the facts because they were trying to force a conclusion, right, of their video.
No, I don't know. I don't think they were forcing a conclusion. But this is my personal opinion, so take it for whatever it's worth.
Sure.
When I look at the alignment sites of Avebury, where I had the honor of visiting very recently, right? It's in the center of that ley line in England between the southwestern tip and then it goes a bit northeast.
I think it's a nexus actually of two big ones.
Now, I took that website that we talked about, Mario BuildRep, that's the one. Now, when I look at the lines I can find in the Netherlands with hunebedden, the dolmens, if you will,
right,
and grave hills and that kind of stuff, and I look at the same alignments, I find the exact same alignment as that Avebury line. Now, if you look at Stonehenge points exactly, and I'm taking the coordinates that they give you on the internet, right?
Right.
I take those coordinates and it points just about south of Greenland. And Avebury points just to the other location between the south of Greenland and the current North Pole and there's another location there. And that's where it points. So what I'm saying is, this stuff was rebuilt every time the poles shifted and moved. Now, I don't know the time interval, how fast it went, right? But something happened.
I think that, if I may, I think that it jumped 3 times at least. According to Cook's work, the current seemed to jump points on the North Pole. One was facing the at the top of Greenland. That apparently is where Avery or the Stonehenge is pointing, but there are other lines that line up to other places. Like one was right over top of Hudson Bay in Canada. That was probably another point, and they really can tell this because, or according to Janot, of course, take it for what you will, is because when those currents came in, they pulled up material that also snowed down around it and created different glacial pathways because of all the snow that it was accumulating, miles and miles of snow that was falling back down, which would never melt because it was just continually being made. So this is quite possibly them aligning their sights to these things. There's also the myth that there was an opening and closing in the sky that was like a portal that would open and close, and this is it was basically where the magnetic current, or we'll call it the current coming into from the sun, would be reaching down from the top of the planet, or to the top of the planet, but it would have an opening. So that was another idea. But
allow me to interrupt there, Neil. And I mean, it's fascinating what you bring to the table, but I want to show people here, and David, if you want to play ball here, I want to show people what they can do for themselves, right? We're always talking about EU geology, people can do it themselves. Now, let me just show this example here. Can you zoom in again on Stonehenge? Okay, everybody can do this themselves, and I'm not saying I'm correct here what I'm doing this on the fly, but please zoom in. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Now, now you can see that, find the alignment there, because it needs to go rotate a little bit more. Hang on, stop. Now, from the left to the right, that's the old east-west line, right? That means perpendicular on that, basically just about where we're looking at now, that's the north-south line. So you're looking north when Stonehenge was pointing north and east-west with that avenue. There's a stone there, you can see that alignment still, so east-west.
The polar alignment.
Now, if you follow this line if you follow this direction on this map, on Google Earth, whatever, you will find that particular spot on the south of Greenland. If you go to Avebury, you do the same thing. You find that spot that's higher up in Greenland. And then point, of course, the current North Pole position. And there's a fourth one that goes back more in time south of Greenland. Now, what I'm saying here is the following. Anybody can look at any ancient monument using Google Earth. There's always information to be found about what the learned people, the official learned people think about what is their orientation. And you can look at the stuff. Now, if you put all those lines together, which this Mario Buildrap did on that website, you cannot ignore that math. He pointed out the math there on that website. He done the math and the statistics for you. Those correlations are so strong. We cannot ignore those.
What are the correlations? What do they point to?
The correlations are that you find amongst hundreds of ancient megalithic monuments, and you take their north alignment, right, as we just shown an example with Stonehenge. Everybody can do this. You will find there are only about 4 spots where they all coalesce, where they all come together. And those spots are the cutting points. So on the northwest, from the Atlantic point of view, all the monuments east of it point a little bit towards the west. And all the monuments in America, to the west of it, all point a little bit to the east. And the older they get, the more east-west they point, because this North Pole was lower on the map, if you will. Now, if you look at all these alignments and you put the statistics at work here, which is what this guy did on that website, then you cannot ignore that. That hard, that's basically the line there.
So the evidence you're claiming is that
strong.
it's because there's these four, since they all point to four rather than 100 different places, that's evidence that each of those four was at one time what was perceived magnetically to be north.
Well,
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. Or at least the thing was meandering slowly, you would get every time, every couple of years, if you will, another one, just slowly more and more north. But that's not what they do. There is a sudden destruction and a rebuilding or an adding on to an older temple with the new alignment. Look at the ancient big things in Egypt that's allegedly in the shape of a human body, the whole temple thing. Right. I never bought that one. Yeah. And if you look at the alignments, those alignments exactly correlate with these points of merging where the lines cross, right? And those are the spots at Greenland, which Mario Biltweb points out. Now, this is the story about Stonehenge. It's fascinating.
This might be, this seems to indicate to me that they were pointing at the footprint of this current.
There you freeze this image, please. Sorry, Neil, go.
They were pointing at the footprint of this current, because what's important, if I'm not mistaken, same with barrow mounds and other pyramid structures, is if you can make the people stand on one point and then you climb a hill or whatever, or you see the stairway to heaven, and then they go and communicate with the god and they come back down. This is a somewhat of what they're looking at here, but this of course is a circle, and they're pointing. They have to rebuild it because the god's footprint has moved, and it would change everything if it's not, basically providing the illusion.
You can't predict it anymore because somebody turned the bloody clock on the Earth scale, right?
By the way, it doesn't necessarily mean that are they all on that line? Because I wouldn't interpret them. Some of them apparently were supposed to be further out, but I won't debate his work right now.
No. The alignment is towards the red circles you see here. So when I look at the Hunebedden, the dolmens in my country, in the Netherlands, we also have megalithic stoneworks.
Oh, of course,
right?
Yes.
And they're tiny, and you go like, well, is that it? But they have alignments too. And if you take those alignments, they coincide with these points again. Now, that ain't coincidence. That's what I'm pointing out. This is real number correlations, Neil.
No, I'm not denying. It's very interesting.
So if you think of the Birkeland currents coming in, and where the center of the Birkeland current is where the magnetic center is going to be, then it's really like lightning bolts touching down in four different places.
Well, it should jump. Generally speaking, it should move from point to point to point. Interestingly, there's some very odd landscapes in some of those areas, but and of course,
now why those particular 4 points would be attractors to the current would be interesting.
Well, there was some indication that, basically the question is it this idea of the footprint moving, or did the pole actually move? The trouble is that
that's the point, Neil.
Yeah, but a pole is nothing but the manifestation of the current.
No. The geophysical pole, the rotational pole,
yes,
the
Neil,
North Star.
The physical pole followed backwards from pole 1 to pole 2, backwards in time to pole 3 to pole 4 to pole 5. And when you have 400 or 500 ancient megalithic alignments, and you make all those lines that direction, and they only cross about 100 in pole 5, and about 100 in pole 4, and about 100 in pole 3, and about 100 in pole 2,
right?
That ain't coincidence.
No, but that's magnetic pole.
No. This is physical pole. This is solar alignment. This is all these monuments are created so that you can measure the time and cross the year for the seasons. That's what they do. There's nothing mystical about it. But the magical part here is that these things shift as they get older, and this guy could track them back with these pole alignments, and he has the numbers on the websites.
So they'd accomplished the alignment by looking at the solstices.
Well, a disaster happened. The pole shifted. That means your
no. But I mean, the way they would find a pole, the way they would identify where a pole is by the solstices, right?
Well, that's what they do.
They didn't go survey. I mean, they didn't. No. They weren't able to look at the Earth from the moon and see where the rotational axis was.
Well, I guess observation will tell you, and across a few years, where it is again, right? But
it also implies that these were not so catastrophic as, like, for example, today we forgot what these things are for. If these people kept rebuilding them, that means they must have survived these, whatever you're talking about.
Yes.
Now, and of course, my interpretation initially, of course, is thinking that these are footprints of where the current was coming down at. But you're saying
could be.
It's not now. You're saying that the actual planet is rotating.
No, I'm saying both could be true, or basic maybe the current touches down on another location and therefore that pole moves. The actual pole moves.
But it also implies how old some of these structures must be. I mean, they must be pre-history, like way older than we think they are.
A couple of 100,000 years is what he's implying too when he bases it. And mind you, there's flaws there too, but when he bases it on the Greenland, Iceland sheet and all that data. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to shift a gyroscope.
Well, that's my point. It creates a wobble and stuff.
Well, so I mean, we have to look at it from a gyroscopic point of view. If the X rotates at a certain place, and it suddenly changes. I mean, there's all kinds of, angular momentum dynamics that get involved.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd almost wonder, was it the continent that moved rather than the rotational axis?
This is just a question that I'm throwing out here in my imagination, right?
Sure.
What if the Birkeland current, or the residual Birkeland current that drives the Earth right now, right? What if it were to intensify suddenly and jump a little bit in angle, in location? I mean, you have a very powerful thing going on there, right? Then
it's true. That's very true.
That would be your cataclysm and the shifting of that magnetic thing, that gate opening, what Neil was referring to. But what I'm implying here is that might actually be the mechanism, changing, meandering, Birkeland current, whatever, which would explain catastrophe and would explain actually these jumps of the Earth. It would explain the megaliths. It would explain a lot in my book.
Well, actually,
that's a really good point. Did you name it meandering Birkeland current?
Yeah, I'm just imagining that here. I confess that, but I've been looking at this topic for a long time. I love talking about it because I see these correlations.
These
I cannot
pyramids
break
are
them,
geosynced. Yes, but the other ones are geosynced. Yeah, see, these are locations of. So these are pyramids pointing to a different spot. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah. So what happens here is, Neil, when you look at the Maya monuments and the old Chinese pyramids,
right,
and you take the alignment, they cross exactly over there. So that is what is happening. That means because they are alignments to the true North Pole, yes, the pole moved, and that would be your answer.
You're right.
But also, listen to this: geology. When you would change it from this black dot to the next black dot where the current North Pole is, remember the Earth is oblate. Yes, it would be there would be a need for a tremendous force to change the actual rotating Earth position a little bit.
Well, maybe it didn't.
Well, maybe it did, and maybe that's the reason why. Remember the crust shape? Continents rise and fall when that thing keeps ticking on, right? Across time.
Well, and continuing with this sudden burst of incoming energy, that's exactly what it would take to suddenly melt the glaciers and give us an interglacial period.
Yes.
A huge that was my thesis of my talk, was that the ice core records show us that there's a cyclical huge burst of incoming energy every 100,000 years.
Right.
And that, I mean, it could even give us the polar alignment thing. Like suddenly the the electrical field is so strong that it lines up all the planets, and forget about gravitational orbits for a time being. We're all strung along the one current. During that period when this huge influx is coming into the solar system.
You see, I think this is really important.
I'm just thinking about it.
I'll give you another example. When you plug in these pole positions and you look at the climatological record of Europe, right? That pole position would coincide with the climate that we subscribe to that period of time.
Yeah, there you've got the ice core records in blue right there.
That means this is the Great Pyramid is...
So now the Ice Age is gone. This is a little bit warmer. Now you begin with the Ice Age, more Ice Age, next Ice Age, gone with the Ice Age. See? Look
but he's implying the ages of the objects are hundreds of thousands of years old. Obviously, by this, I assume that's what I'm looking at here.
If you follow the Iceland's current accepted dating of the Greenland ice sheet, but remember, their dating with the isotopes might be a little bit off. So the dating.
The dating is by layers of in the snow.
Yeah.
It's the temperatures that are done by isotopes.
Yes, and that has to do with that because they're melting and growing periods, of course. But I believe what he's showing here, this correlation, is also to be true.
Oh no, I wasn't contradicting that. I'm just saying
maybe I missed your point there. Sorry, Richard. Try again.
No, it was just that how do they, if the ice core records have validity, then the way they calculate age is by looking for the layers, which occur because you have 6 months of sunlight and 6 months of darkness. So obviously the pattern of snow compaction is going to be different in those two periods. So you see a little gray stripe or something that supposedly gives you a year. So that, right or wrong, it has nothing to do with isotopes. But then they look within a layer, and they look at the isotopes to say things about how much carbon dioxide there was and what the temperature was. And
well, that has to do with those jumps, right? And well, again, I think there's some truth. There's a lot of truth to that. I'm just saying there are some problems with the dating, but I reckon, in my personal opinion, these time periods might actually be more or less true. Definitely, yeah.
Well, this would mean then that the Great Pyramid of Giza is just one of the most recent ones.
Yes, that's the most recent one. That was.
Well, wait, do we know when it was built?
Well, it's aligned directly to the North Pole. That's all.
So it's within
the last
time it shifted.
12,000 years.
Plus, it's also a technical marvel compared to some of the others.
How do you align a pyramid?
Well, you have to have a way of knowing where north is. No, wait, and is it toward the North Pole or toward the magnetic north?
North Pole.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm wondering because I'm trying to understand and wrap my mind around this, because pyramids have four corners. And is it a corner axially aligned with the North Pole?
No,
like
the side.
Corner?
The side.
One of the sides, just a random one of the sides that they choose happens to be facing.
Well, no, it's within a millionth of a degree or something. I mean, it's like not half.
500 of a degree. Pretty big, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to play skeptic or devil's advocate here, and because I've never really gotten into this, and I'm curious because you guys keep showing a lot of data, but I'm not really sure about how any of them align at all. I mean,
are you looking at this screen that David is sharing there?
I am, but I'm also asking because I see a lot of people say that there's these global ley lines on Earth, and there's these magnetic special, like spots where they meet up and the intersections, and people are just drawing circles on the Earth, and things happen.
Yeah, but that's correlate. Explaining why they're there where they are. We're talking simply about the alignment.
I had no idea that those structures were aligned to such. No one told me that they were that aligned off. Like, if I had known that one pyramid, like let's say the White Pyramid in China, or one of those ones down in Middle America, if I had known one of them was off by 9.8 degrees, that would have stuck in my brain forever. Because I would never be able to deal with that. Because I'd be like, why is it not facing north? Because
what I'm saying, Neil, so this is one of the odd questions that nobody ever answered until this guy built this website.
They do the same thing in astrophysics. We were just talking about this before with freaking like glitches and stuff. They hide this stuff under the truth, so we'll never see it because it damns their model all to pieces. I mean, this is damning. This is very damning.
I think Buddy's making a good point.
Sorry, Buddy.
This is a big deal.
How exactly is the measurement done? This gets into the engineering pragmatic aspect of it.
Well, like I said earlier, I think the way people who, let's say, were localized in their geography would be able to tell where the North Pole is has something to do with looking where the summer and winter solstice are.
Yes.
And then it's going to be somewhere in between, and then they had to have some understanding of latitude in order to interpret that. But it's all could be done with the right kind of astronomical knowledge.
Actually, I don't think you need even that. I think that if you just observed the day and night, and whichever ones are at equal times, you would know that that's the equinox. And then, of course, how would you tell the time? I'm forgetting.
Yeah, but they didn't have that accurate.
I just realized that.
What's the one we have in Ireland up north? I forget the name of it, but it's a line so that the sun only comes in at the winter solstice when the sun's lowest in the sky, and then they get for 4 days it comes in there. So that proves they knew where it was.
The solstice,
yes.
And so they had some way of observing that. But it's much easier to observe the behavior of the sun than it is to figure time to milliseconds, you know.
This was that point that I was going to come back to. It's the measurement of the second.
Whoa.
You know?
Dude, I just realized you're probably right, Richard. If, for example, Neptune is on a severe angle, am I not mistaken, it's Neptune? Or is it Uranus?
Yeah, you can see like the place where the time of the year where it becomes totally not going over the horizon would be a special day. Yeah.
Well, no, I meant that the planet Neptune is on an angle, isn't it? Or is it the one that's on, or Uranus, the one that's on
Uranus?
Uranus. Yeah. Okay, so that is obviously it must be somehow suffering some sort of torque, trying to get it to go along with the magnetic field of the sun to be orientated with it.
Whenever it's above the plane of the solar system, it's experiencing a magnetic force pushing it toward, pushing it down. And if it's below, the magnetic force wants to push it up.
Yes, there's going to be a torque generated by that, and of course it's rotating. So, and it's not a lot of torque, but I can envision then something happened where our planet was on a severe angle. According to that, it was on a 50-degree angle as opposed to 23 or something. No, wait. Our latitude 0 is at 23.5 degrees now. So we were actually 53.2, but 64 degrees off axis.
It depends on what the axis changes, on which axis you change. That's the zero meridian, right?
Yeah. Well, sure, but
who says that we were on 0? That we were right?
No. I meant. Okay, if you put our latitude, the planet Earth, and you know that the directly north in our sky, straight up towards Polaris, is 23.5 degrees or 23 degrees, I guess, off the angle of the sun. Okay, from the direction the sun is. So that means that if the North Pole had moved downwards to 51.7, if that was one of the numbers I saw, the furthest down below down by Newfoundland where it was down that far. That angle plus 23.5 would be the angle of that we were to the sun when we came in and started changing.
I'm saying is,
or when these objects were born or were built.
Well, it could be the other direction of the angle.
That's
too.
true. You're right. I could be wrong.
But that doesn't matter right now. That's kind of what I'm implying with the mechanism, or rather, I have you guys talk about to teach me how that mechanism would work. That pole could actually shift. So what I understand right now is an Earth that had a different angle or a different distance from the solar plane, right, which I heard you say, or came in from a further distance, whatever, any change in that position would change the angle automatically. That's what I hear.
Would try, not necessarily succeed.
There are your steps then.
There would be a force involved. Being caught in a giant lightning bolt, for example, would be something that might throw us for a big tizzy, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and when you say lightning bolt, think in terms of a
very
rotating
powerful
Birkeland current.
Yes.
You know,
that's what I meant. Yes,
a big twisting force.
Or it could be, again, we could have been sucked up to another planet or thrown away from another planet. That could also have occurred.
They are already there, right, Neil? Those Birkeland currents are already
always there
to the Earth, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that is a fact. And if that is a fact, and the thing is in a dark mode, right?
Yeah.
If I'm saying this correctly. But what if it goes into glow mode or an arc mode? You know, that would seriously mess things up.
And so, are you talking about a Birkeland current coming off of a planet going to glowing mode?
No, the one from the sun is the primary one.
Yeah.
It's more likely to be in glow mode and have great force. The arc mode ones they're actually minor compared to the solar current in terms of it's a dramatic where it forms the Grand Canyon.
It's even arguable that you could even make an arc blast. Would there even be an arc in space, because there's just not enough material to have to punch through? It would be much easier to create
an energy surge then, right? Either from the sun or from out there.
Let me give you an example of this that I think that would explain what we're all seeing. In Comet Tempel 1, we sent a projectile from the observing spacecraft. It was about, I don't know how many tons it was, but it was a copper projectile, and we sent it down to Comet Tempel 1. In so doing, it exploded about 7 miles from the actual comet, and it created a blast that was so bright it overwhelmed the. That's the blast right there. That white one at the bottom lower left-hand corner. That one there is the same thing. That's the contact. It overwhelmed the sensors.
It also overwhelmed the electronics.
Oh,
there were radio waves that came out that
of course
caused static in the recording devices.
Nice. I didn't know that.
So they shot an asteroid.
They shot an asteroid. But here, get ready for this. It gets cool. On the footage of the actual approach of the copper projectile, you can see on the last few frames it violently twisted, like the camera went flying off to one side, and it shouldn't have. It's in space. So what force of torque was put there? And it was done there when its leader charges made contact with the currents coming off the comet, obviously, and that created a short and kaboom. So that was what happens when charged objects, like when we send them to Mars, they don't explode. So that would imply that things on Mars are relatively close to us in charge, but it's not. But comets obviously are clearly not.
Also, the approach was more gradual, so there was time for discharge to take place. Whereas if you shoot something, and plus comets are coming from a much more negative place.
So I hear.